Hey, bro. My name is Pixel Gadget, and I've been a game designer for 10 years. And today I wanted to talk with you about AI in game dev, and specifically the impending indie dev renaissance that I foresee happening in the very near future. I'm going to go into my personal experience with using AI for indie dev and just how that's been going. It's all very recent. Maybe the past couple years is when I first, like a couple years ago, 3 years ago, is when I first started exploring image generation AI. And I think the first thing that caught my attention was the fact that you can use it commercially. You have full rights to use the images. And back then, I just remember the image generator being so bad. Like the images looked terrible. It was obvious they were generated by AI, but we are entering a point where the AI is getting to be at the level of quality of human work. And so I think indie devs everywhere are at a turning point. And I kind of want to give my 2 cents about what's going on and talk about how I think there's nothing to be scared of, and that actually this is a really exciting time, and that things are really good despite all the fear that's going around with this particular topic. So, like I said, I got into AI about 3 years ago, experimenting with image generation. And I was like, this is not going to work. And I was still trying to figure out how to do game dev myself. And I guess to really explain the full story of my experience with AI, I kind of got to do some background on my own indie dev journey. So, when I say I've been a game designer for 10 years, I mean I was educated for 4 of those years at a special game design college. And then for the past 6 years, I've been trying and failing to become an indie dev and doing other things. So, although I have the time, I would not say I'm an expert on this topic, but I do have some experience, and I think it's worth sharing, and that's why we're here. So, I've always struggled to make games on my own. It's been a challenge. I'm not an artist, and I'm not a coder, and I'm not a sound designer. I'm a game designer, so I like to make mechanics and game feel is my big thing. I like to make games that feel good to play. So that's always been my strong suit, has been something called UI UX and game feel. So UX means user experience, UI is the kind of the stuff you see in like the HUD, displays the ammo, the health, that kind of stuff. Those have always been my strong suits. Got a lot of experience working with those systems, but with those other things, I've always felt like I was behind. I was playing catch up. So one of the reasons why I always had trouble making games on my own was the coding, the scripting. I use Unity specifically, and my scripting was just spaghetti code all over. I remember the way we did it back then, or the way I did it, was a YouTube tutorial and patch it all together and hope it works and break it a million times and play test the heck out of it and find all the bugs. And that was all I knew. And the games I made were buggy messes and the code was unreadable and illegible, but I was able to make games through YouTube tutorials. So it is possible. However, I basically gave up on game dev about 2 years ago because it was just too hard, and I was having a lot of trouble. But recently I came back to it, and I've been using AI to do a lot of the scripting. So I started with ChatGPT. I would paste in the code I already had and tell it to add things to the code, and that worked pretty darn well. It was doing good. But then someone clued me in and said, "Oh, ChatGPT doesn't write very good code. You should try Claude." And I was like, okay. So I tried it, and then I just went on Google and was like, well, what's the best AI for Unity dev? And they told me about this thing called Bezzy, and I tried this thing, and I will never make games the same way ever again. Like I feel like I've been totally won over by AI, at least for scripting. It basically went into my project, it looked at all the scripts, and it just was making changes and making fixing bugs on its own in this thing called agent mode. And then I've been using Gemini AI generation and ChatGPT AI image generation for HUD elements, UI elements, all kinds of things, buttons, and even my Steam page promotional materials. And they look really good, and they do not look like AI generated at all. Um, So, how is this affecting my game dev journey? Well, I'll tell you. Basically, before this, game dev was always an extremely stressful deal. Like, extremely difficult, just takes everything out of me. And be so stressed out and have no time to spend with my family, my friends, and no time to take care of myself, let alone clean my house, take care of my, nutrition. Like I would just let myself go and I'd always burn out. And that's how I tried a number of projects and something would always go wrong. And it's because I always pushed myself too hard. But now with this AI technology, I am basically able to work on this game about 4 days a week, very um, like way less. I usually would do 7 days a week all day, like just nonstop, and then I'd burn out, right? Do that for like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then I'd always like just get burnt out, can't go on. Well, now it's like I feel like I have such a healthier relationship with my game because the AI is doing this heavy lifting that used to give me so much stress and anxiety. And this is my big thing. It's like I'm pro AI because time is precious. Like I want to spend time with my family and my friends and do my like fun hobbies. I don't want to be a slave to game dev. I love game dev. I love the creativity of it, but there's definitely that element of like, well, if I'm making a game, I'm going to lose my life. And I feel like that's been true for decades, And now here we are at this point where the technology is reaching a level where it can do a lot of the heavy lifting. And it's now mostly creative work, artistic work, composition work. Some things that I don't think AI is going to be able to do for a long time is level design, systems design, artistic composition, narrative design. I think it can do those things, but can it do them well in a cohesive way? No, I don't think they'll be able to do that for a long time, maybe never, decades. So as a game designer, I don't feel threatened by this. But to the people who are threatened by this AI stuff, who have been working in the industry and they're upset about it, I guess, and this might be like totally ignorant, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just wanted to say this. I was like, were you really enjoying your job? The job that the AI is taking from you, was that really enjoyable and fulfilling for you? Or was it miserable and grueling and horrible? I mean, being a programmer for a game, being an animator for a game, artistic 3D modeler for a game, at these big game companies, I shouldn't say this, but I feel like all these people are drug addicts because it's so miserable to be working these jobs because they work you to the bone. And then AI is taking these jobs and they're getting upset. And I completely understand. Change is scary. It's pretty disturbing how quickly AI is developing. However, in the long run, these people are going to be able to pursue passions and careers that they never would have normally been able to do that might be more fulfilling to them. Honestly, I genuinely believe that. Certain careers that are being taken by AI, I do think is sad. For example, music. The AI makes really darn good music, and in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be making music that sounds better than human music. And that is a bit heartbreaking that that profession is going away in a pretty big way. But with that said, I wanted to propose an analogy to you that I think should ease your tensions a little bit about this whole AI thing, especially with game dev. Specifically, it's an analogy about books. So books, they've been around for thousands and thousands of years. But how did they start? Well, 1,000 years ago, if you wanted to make a book, all right, first you had to learn how to read, which nobody knew how to read. So you had to go learn how to read and write, which apparently took a long time and very expensive at the time. Only the very wealthy people could do that. And it would take a group of scribes to create a book. And then they would have to write each page individually and bind the book by hand. And they would create one book. And it could take years to create one book, maybe 2, 3, 4 books. And then the printing press was invented. And then modern bookbinding techniques were invented. And then the typewriter was invented. And then now we have digital printing technology. You can write your book on a computer and stuff. And so what happened with the books? Well, what happened is it became about creativity and not actual technical skill anymore. You didn't have to be able to write thousands and thousands and thousands of words over the course of a year anymore. Sorry if it's windy out here. I'm actually out in the forest right now enjoying this beautiful spring day. Thought I'd record the video outside, but I think the mic is probably picking up the wind. Not much I can do about that. Anyways, my point is that nowadays anyone with a laptop can write a book, and they don't need to have any technical skills except the skill of creative writing and composition and putting words together in a beautiful way. And no one bats an eye. It's normal. And hey, another thing to alleviate your tensions is the book market is absolutely saturated with so many books. Millions of books are published every single year, and guess what? People still find a way to make a living as writers. They write books, they make money, they make a living, they live a happy life. And this is a normal, well-accepted career path, and I am going to tell you that I believe in the coming years, being an indie game dev is going to be like that, to be an author of books. When someone says, oh, I make games, it'll be just like, oh yeah, that's normal. He makes games. You know, a single solo person can make a game, just like they say a solo person can write a book. That's completely normal now and totally normalized. And I think indie solo game dev is going to go that route with this powerful AI that is now doing the heavy lifting. We don't need the scribes anymore to write the books for us. So, like I said in the beginning, what this means is more time to take care of ourselves as indie devs, because let's be real. I mean, I've watched a couple documentaries about indie devs, solo devs who make games. They all go insane. They all, you know, a lot of them suffer from addictions, alcoholism, because it's so stressful to make a game on your own, or at least it was. And now we've got the technology that is basically allowing us to live our lives, live a fulfilling, enjoyable life, take care of our families, be with our children, right? I mean, I just have to wonder, I mean, being a solo dev is so hard. How would I take care of a family if I'm a solo dev? Like, trying to make a game in a reasonable amount of time, how am I going to do that without AI? But with the power of AI, I feel like now being a solo indie dev is going to be a completely normal career. And now anyone with a good idea, a good mechanic, and some gumption to actually build the thing. And here's my big point is AI is not going to build your game for you. Okay, it's still the architecture, the planning, the time management, the commitment. That's all on us. And it's still going to be challenging. Believe me, artistic expression is challenging, even when it's just a paintbrush and a canvas. Okay, there's something, and I'm going to make a whole video about the kind of creative challenges of game dev and just the doubting and the shame and the guilt that just comes with trying to express ourselves through game dev. How scary it is to, you know, strike the canvas and actually make things that people can play and interact with. I know I've struggled with doubt and fear a lot in my game dev journey, and I feel like I'm working through that, and the AI is not working through that for me. I can tell you that. Like, that emotional work is happening on the ground floor here with me, and it's up to me to clean house and work through that emotional material so my game is as good as it can be and can bring joy to people's lives. And I think that's my big final point, is that AI is allowing me to finally live my dream of being an indie game dev. I love making games. I've always loved making games. I've loved playing games. I love that games can change people's lives. I want to tell you a story about how a game that changed my life, and that was The Last of Us Part 2. And I went into the game being kind of an Ellie fanboy. I love Ellie. She's my favorite video game character, one of my favorites, got to be my favorite. Besides maybe the outsider from Dishonored. If you know, you know. But Ellie, I was a big Ellie fan, and then the game switched it up on me. Spoilers, by the way, if you haven't played it, sorry. But the game switches to this other character. You have to play as this other character, the villain, actually, for the second half of the game. And I was like so upset about it. I was like, I want to play as Ellie. What the heck is this? By the end, I had totally started to sympathize with the villain character, Abby. And then it switches back to Ellie, and you have to fight Abby at her lowest. And it was this emotional climax that absolutely shattered me. my conception of everything about that game, about those characters, about life itself, about forgiveness and love, it opened me up completely. And I was actually going through a difficult time with some of my family members when I played that game. And right after I played that game, I called them and I said I loved them and that I forgave them and that it was not a problem anymore, because the game showed me that basically it's all about love. It's all about forgiveness and letting go and understanding that other people's suffering is exactly like my suffering and that we're not so different. Anyways, that's a little bit of a tangent, but my point is that game affected me on this like extremely deep emotional level. And my main point is your game can too. My game can too, especially now that the accessibility has been just blown wide open. And anyone with a beautiful, engaging, emotional story that wants to change the world for the better can now tell their story. How many people that have written some of the most amazing books in the world would have never gotten their story out if it weren't for the typewriter, right? Because of this technology, we're now able to express ourselves even more without the stress of having to worry about constantly trying to learn how to code and be like a jack of all trades. I mean, it's impossible being an artist, a game designer, because you'll notice this, a lot of indie games, like you'll play them and you'll be like, the art is so good, but the game design's kind of not there. Or the game design is so good, but the art is not there and the audio is not there. And it's a glitchy mess. Or the code is really, you see what I mean? Like there's these weak points because we're only human as solo devs. And it's so hard to be a master of all these things. And those people do exist and they are savants, but they are not the norm. And people like me who specialize in design, but kind of are weaker in these other aspects, AI could not have come at a better time. It has basically come at the perfect time in my game design career to jumpstart this game I'm making right now. And I cannot wait to share it with you guys. I'm just waiting to get the Steam page up so that when I do make the video, people can start wishlisting. That's another thing is AI is not going to market your game for you. I'll just be completely honest. The reason why I've created this YouTube channel is two reasons. One is I want a place where I can express myself and talk openly about my journey with game dev and share my knowledge and wisdom with you guys and help as much as I can other people with their journeys, but also to promote my own project. To me, this is part of my career. This is part of my business. My indie dev journey for me is I'm building a business. And it just so happens that building that business is allowing me to live a fulfilling life, a creative life, and expressing myself creatively. So that's really wonderful. And I'm so grateful to have that opportunity. And it really, I owe it all to AI, especially for the coding side of things. Art has never been a problem because of the Unity Asset Store and all kinds of online resources. But as for coding, it's always been a challenge. And now the AI is doing it for me in a lot of ways. And now it's just up to me to do the creative part of things, the game design, the level design, the narrative design, and the artistic composition of the game as a whole, colors, shapes, that kind of thing, which I think is a big enough job on its own. So just wanted to conclude this talk by thanking you so much for listening to me. And I hope you got something valuable out of this. I hope it quelled some of your fears, because I found that a lot of my fellow indie devs are really scared of this new technology. But I'm here to tell you there's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, it's a very exciting time. And I'm so grateful that we have access to this technology as indie devs. It's really a great gift. And I can't wait to keep using it and make beautiful games that change people's lives. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed, and farewell.